In this video, let's discuss about how we can fetch data using HTTP. So initially what you need to do is, first step is, inside app.module.ts, we need to import HTTP client module. Okay, import HTTP client module from @Angular /common /HTTP. Okay, once you have imported HTTP client module, we need to include this HTTP client module as part of our imports array. Okay, inside imports array, we need to include HTTP client module. Okay, this is the first step. We have done it. We have imported HTTP client module from Angular common HTTP. So next step, what we need to do is, inside our service, that is student service.ts, if you want to understand about Angular services, please refer my previous video where I have discussed about Angular services in detail. Okay, how we can create this file, what we can do, all that. But previously we had discussed only like hard coding the data inside the service. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to fetch the data using HTTP. Okay, now we have already imported HTTP client module inside our app.module.ts, right? Now we need to use this HTTP client module inside our service by using import HTTP client, import HTTP client from @Angular /common /HTTP. Okay, we have imported HTTP client from Angular common HTTP. We need to register this from app.module.ts. Whatever the HTTP client module we have used here, we are registering inside our service using HTTP client. We are importing it. Okay, once this is done, next step what we need to do is, inside our service, we need to create a variable, private variable of HTTP client, whatever we have imported so far. So inside our constructor, let's declare a private variable HTTP from HTTP client. Okay, we have created variable of HTTP client. Now next step is to create a URL where we can find the data of the students.json file. Let's create students.json file. Inside assets, we need to create a folder, that is, right click on this, new folder, give a name, for example data, and inside this data folder, let's create a file, students.json file, new file with name students.json. Okay, and inside this JSON file, what we need to do, we need to include the data which we want to display, that is students data, where we want to fetch the data using HTTP. So let's create an array of objects which will have student data. For example, ID, okay, 1, and I want name to be displayed, for example, that is Harsha, and age, okay, 27, for example. Okay, let's create some data. Let's copy this. Okay, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's give some names here. For example, Suraj, Arun, Vinay, Shri. Okay, and some age values, for example 25, 26, 30, and 34. Okay, So we have created an array of student objects where we are having the data with ID, name and age. Now using this data, what we need to do inside our service, using this data wherever it's located, that is students.json file is located inside assets data folder, right? So if we want to access the data inside this file, we need to pass this as a path. Okay, we need to pass as a path for the variable. For example, I want to create a variable private, for example underscore URL of type string equals, and here I need to specify the path of our data where we want to fetch using HTTP. So in case of real time, what we will do, from web server we will get the data and we'll pass that URL path here. But in this case, what we are, since we cannot access the web server as of now, what we will do is we'll pass the URL of the file where we are having data. So slash assets slash data slash students.json file. This is the file path which we are specifying here. Okay, and we have specified the path now. So next step, what we need to do, we need to use the get call. That is how HTTP get call will get the data, right? So we need to use get call. So next step, what we need to do here is we need to create a method, for example get students. Okay, and this method should return an observable. Observable is a response which we get, right? So observable we need to pass as a return type for this observable, and we need to cache this observable to our data where we are having the student details information. For example, I need to create an interface student which will have ID, name and age, which I am passing here student.json. Here we are having the values for ID, name and age. We need to have properties for these, right? We still don't have properties for ID, name and age. We need to create properties in the form of an interface file, and we need to pass that interface to this observable. We need to cache that for this observable. Okay, this is how we are injecting as dependency in student service. This is called dependency injection. So here inside this we need to cache that interface. So before casting, what we need to do, we need to create an interface, right? Because get will return an observable, but we need to convert to type usable in our application. So what we need to do is we need to create a student interface, that is student.ts, for example in app folder. Okay, what we will do is inside app folder, let's create a file by using right click, new file, let's name it as student.ts. Okay, so this is an interface file which I am going to create now. Inside this interface file, what I need to do, what I need to define, I need to define the parameter, the properties for these values which I have specified here. The array object which we have specified here, these values ID, name and age. This ID, name and age, we should have some skeleton, right? Properties which should be declared of what type, what ID is what type, name is what type. We need to specify a skeleton for this. So what we need to do, we need to write an interface here, export interface, for example iStudent. Okay, and inside this interface let's declare ID with type number, then what we need, name with type string, then age with type as number. Okay, now we have declared these properties ID, name and age inside our interface. Now we should pass this interface to our observable. We need to cast it here so that the observable will know what kind of data we have. When we cast only, what will happen, it will get call what we are doing here, that is get students, will return an observable, but this observable we need to convert to the type which is usable in our application, correct? So what is the type? The type which we are going to pass is this interface which we are writing here, interface iStudent. So we need to pass as, we need to cast it here, iStudent. Okay, iStudent. and what this will return, this will return this dot underscore URL. Okay, but what we are doing here, the observable which we are writing here is casting to iStudent, right? And this should return this dot underscore URL return type. So we need to return this, that is return this dot http dot get call of iStudent okay, iStudent array. This should be this dot underscore URL. Okay, and what we need to do here, iStudent which we are specifying here, we need to import it, right? We need to import iStudent, we need to import observable also. So to import iStudent, what we need to do, we need to import it, that is import iStudent from which path? iStudent is located inside dot slash student. Okay, and we need to import observable from rxjs. Import observable from rxjs. Okay, now we have written get students method here. This get will return observable, and we are casting it to iStudent, which is usable in our application. So we are creating iStudent interface, that is student.ts inside our app folder. Okay, and cast observable into array of students. Cast this observable to array of students. So once we have written this get students method, we can access this method that will return the observable, right? And this observable can be used only when component subscribes to this observable. So next step what we need to do is, after this we need to go to app.component.ts, and inside app.component.ts we need to create a local students variable, okay, and a constructor which will take the student service from here and get this method and display on our component web page. So what we need to do, we need to declare a constructor here to initialize, that is, let's create a private variable here, private underscore student service, because from service student service.ts only we need to get, right? So we need to create a local variable here, private variable, the underscore student service, which we will get from student service. Okay, and inside ng on init we need to call this get students method. Whatever we are writing here, get students method, which we are declaring inside student.service.ts, we need to invoke this method. And from observable we get data asynchronously. So we assign that data to property in our component class, and later we will bind it to the view. Okay, so what we need to do next is, inside app component.ts we need to get that method first, this dot, using this our private variable which we have declared, local variable, that is underscore student service dot get students. This get students method comes from where? This get students method comes from student.service. Okay, this get students method, we are invoking that get students method here. And what we need to do, since this is a component which we are writing, we need to subscribe to this observable. Whatever we are return observable here with this dot underscore URL. This dot underscore URL contains our data, students data, all the information, that is students list. If you observe here students.json, we have all the data, student details here, and we are passing this as a path here, and we are passing this as a parameter using this dot underscore URL. So indirectly this will get data from students.json, and this is included inside our observable. This is the response, and this observable, if you want to access, what we need to do, we need to subscribe to this observable. So inside app.component.ts we need to subscribe to that observable, subscribe, and here we need to pass data arrow this dot students equals data. Okay, so what does this statement mean? If you observe this statement, we are subscribing and we are getting the data by subscribing to this observable, right? So what does this data arrow this dot students equals data mean? This means that we assign the data to property in component class and we are binding it to the view. So assigning students data to students property, correct? Whatever the property we have declared here inside app component is students, and we are assigning the data which we are getting from observable by subscribing to it and assigning to this local variable, that is students. This is how we are going to fetch the data using HTTP. So data is what which we contain from the student service, from here observable. We are subscribing to it and we are assigning that data to our local, that is students variable, which we are passing here, students property, which we are declared inside app component class. So finally what we need to do, this is how we are fetching data using HTTP. Now we need to display this data on our web page. So to display this data on our web page, what we need to do, inside app.component.html we need to create an unordered, that is list here, and inside this list let's write ng for statement. Okay, structural directive. This will get all the student details. Let student of, from where, here app component.ts what we have, students, right? This is where we are storing all the data. This dot students refers to this students, and all the data is getting stored here. So we need to access this data. So inside app.component.html what we need to do, let student of, we need to pass students. Okay, and inside EL let's create a list here, li with name. Okay, and let's get using interpolation concept, that is student dot name, which will fetch the name details of the student. Then I want to display age of the student, for example age colon, inside double curly brace using this variable, that is student, because all the data which is stored inside students we are taking into student and we are going to display using interpolation concept here, correct? Student dot age. Okay, let's save these details. Now if you observe, let's run this using npm space start. Okay, now this is getting compiled. It's building. Okay, compiled successfully. Now if you observe the web page, you can get here, see here, name and age is getting displayed, but the corresponding values for name and age are not getting displayed here. Why? Let's see now. See, student.name, student.age, right? This we are getting from app.component.ts. Inside app.component.ts what we are doing, we are writing, we are creating a variable here, that is public students equals this one, and private, okay, this is all correct, constructor, and we are subscribing this data to this dot students equals student data. Okay, now inside students.json we are passing all these values. Instead student.ts we have created an interface here, and in service what we are doing, inside our service private underscore URL of type string equals students.json. Okay, and get students will be observable of I student, we are passing here this dot http dot get I student of this dot underscore URL. So here what we are doing is inside app.component.ts we are storing inside students. We are picking the data from the students property inside app.component.html. Using this property we are going to fetch all the data of the student list of students. So what we are going to do, using structural directive, that is ng for, using this let keyword, we are creating student of students. These students will get the data from here. Okay, and we are going to display student.name, student.age from here. Okay, let's save these changes and observe the web page. See here, now we can see list of students getting displayed here with name and age. Okay, this is how we are going to fetch the data using HTTP. So what we have done so far, if you see all the steps which we have done so far, first what we did, inside app.module.ts we have included HTTP client module. Okay, and we are registering that inside our service. Okay, and we are creating a variable here, that is HTTP variable with HTTP client. Okay, and we are importing HTTP client here. Next what we are going to do, we are creating a file students.json inside assets data folder. Here we are going to specify all the data which we want to display, that is student details, all the student details we are specifying here the values. Okay, post to this what we have done, we have created get students method which will return an observable of not type equal to our application which we want to display. So what we are going to do, we need to cast it to iStudent array. This contains all the property values for student details, that is for example student.ts we have created an interface which contains id, name and age, and we are casting this to this observable, and this will return the get method, that is get students method, which will pass the parameters this dot underscore URL. This URL contains the value of our student details values. Okay, once this is done, what we are going to do, we need to call this get students method inside our app.component.ts. Here we are creating a variable students which will store all the data from the data which we got from this service. Okay, this observable, we are subscribing to this observable here, and we are getting the data, we are invoking this get students method, getting the data and storing inside students. So this students contains all the data required. Using this students property which we have declared here, we are using that property and we are iterating through these students and we are displaying name and age on our web page. This is the complete flow which we have seen using how to get the data using HTTP, how to fetch the data using HTTP. Thank you so much for watching this video guys. Please like, comment and share this video, and kindly subscribe to my channel in order to watch more videos.